Hello, 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 hello. Welcome everyone to Expand Understanding Podcast episode 104. It is September 11th, 2020, which is 19 years after the infamous September 11th. And that might be an interesting topic to get into on the show today, where people's personal experiences were, their life story, where they were at when that happened. I know our administrator Willow was born 2000, so she was one, but that there are others too that myself, let's see, I was 16, 15, 16, something like that. Let's see, 86, so that'd be 96, 15. And excuse me, we'll get the video going here. That one, hello. And that one, cool. And I remember going to, let's see, I woke up the morning of getting ready to go to school, I think, and then went and saw that my parents were watching the news upstairs, looking to see what was happening. And also, let me put up here as a side note: if you're having trouble watching this on YouTube, go to Facebook. YouTube appears to be kind of glitchy right now, at least for watching the stream, and then Facebook seems to be okay, I think. So we'll see how it plays out here going forward, and let us know in the comments. Yoda Tay asks, bitches, what up, Kevin? As an inside joke, it means what's up. It means we love each other, and it's a great terminology. So on let's see, September 11th, came upstairs. Parents were watching um, the news, and I think when I'd seen it, one plane had hit on the news. What they're showing, one tower had been hit, and then while watching, because I think it was like less than an hour later, 50 something minutes later, you saw the next tower take a hit, and it's really interesting. So we've talked about on the show like timelines and um, quantum physics or creating realities or focus of awareness, consciousness studies that show when we focus on things that give attention. I think it's the Harvard sensors or studies that show the spike and increase in consciousness activity around the world right before 9/11 and other events that they've correlated with these mass things that affect the collective unconscious in some way, shape, or form, or some awareness or connectedness into it. And so I remember that being a very significant like life shift. People talk about just kind of whatever happens in a generation or certain things in life doesn't have to be in a generation. But the big events that cross culture that affect everyone, not just your family or your, area of the country or something, the ones that, for whatever reason, get the publicity or the awareness or on such mass scale that they do affect a giant culture in a very significant way. And then the world takes a different turn going on the road to, oh gosh, I don't even know what the terminology was then. It was really good NLP and good programming to get people behind slogans and things. The fight for freedom against terrorists and that whole thing, and the way that all fell apart. And follow the money, man. There's a lot of interesting stuff there. This is not a clean cut story. I actually wonder what the story is. We're almost 20 years behind the Iraq War and all that stuff. I'm actually curious if anybody's been to university recently and gone through like if that one what class would be in cultural studies or recent history, American history or something. Or Zach, maybe Zach coming on the show. If you know what Zach does not know.
No, no, I don't know what basically like the cultural dialogue is on that at this point in time. I don't do a whole lot of paying attention to cultural dialogues
Well,
at
I'm
this
curious because
point in time.
I know some from like Jordan Peterson when he talks about it because he knows he's in the schools and what he's referencing, what's being
He'd be a
taught or
much better
something.
person to ask.
Well, right, right. Well, for sure. We don't have Jordan Peterson right here. So if anybody else has some information that I'm
What the
not
hell,
aware of,
Aaron?
we need to get him on. We need to get on some kind of waiting list to
Or
get Jordan Peterson
some
on the
kind of
show.
university professor would be helpful right now.
Yeah, where somebody's even been to university, at least what they're teaching is the narrative for like the Iraq War and like what do they even teach about that? How do they summarize that? What's the perspective to give on it? Because I mean, I've learned everything about it by living through it, all the media, but then my own research in the years after, and there's just so much nuanced research. I'm very curious what kind of narrative they cherry pick to create a narrative on that, whatever it is.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know. I mean I know that in recent times we've kind of well, we're always kind of fucking with that shit, but we've had some stuff in recent times. It's kind of weird. Like the last thing I heard about is like the Native American Trail of Tears,
Mm.
and we just like, We just like don't teach about that in school
Well,
anymore.
do you know much about that? Will you be able to talk about that?
Not really like a whole lot because I think even in the time when I was a kid, they were already starting to phase that out. Really.
Do you want to Wikipedia it real quick? Maybe there's a decent summary because I've heard that enough now, but I just don't know enough about it to. And I don't know if that relates specifically to, or just it's similar in the tribes when they talk about the Apache tears, that there was a certain incident that happened, and it was the tears of all the mothers
The,
and
the
grandmothers
Trail
that
of
turned
Tears
into
is a
the.
series of forced relocations of a ton of Native Americans. It's when we took like a bunch of Native American tribes and basically originally put them on reservations in between 1830 and 1850, which, I mean, like, well, we wouldn't like it too much if we were forced relocated. You know what I
Yeah, no
mean?
kidding.
If someone just showed up at your house one day and they're like, "Yeah, you're fucking moving," and you're like, "What?" To like next door, and they're like, no,
Right.
actually to a completely different state that you've never been to,
Oh,
and you do
also
not
that
know
language
anyone
you've
there.
grown up with your whole life that has
You don't
massive
speak that anymore.
generational heritage and not just meaning personally, but probably has some kind of magical technology in it in the cadence of resonance. Yeah, we're going to shut all that down
Yeah,
and you're going to learn our language on
yeah,
top. It's funny because I get like, that trying to turn the argument on how savage the savages were, but it was actually the white people, how savage they were, the way their tactics and everything. But it's not just the tactics of
how
war because you could
savage
say,
the savages.
right. That's what they're trying to promote, and it's just when you get
Sure.
into this stuff, the after the war and the way that the white people, like, this kind of stuff, taking their language, forced cultural appropriation, shit, that stuff savage in the negative context, like the regressed way of enforcing your belief on somebody else, and it's on the fucking white people,
Yeah, or
man.
even in
So
the modern way that people use the word like savage, which is the kids, the way the kids use it these days,
yeah, it's
which are
badass,
like
savage.
when someone's like very direct and forward, like unapologetically authentic.
Mm.
That's what they call it now, and like in a certain way, what was done in that relocation is unapologetically authentic. There, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, yeah, yeah, you're gonna move over here now. We want you over here, and they're like, but we don't want to be over there, and it's like, yeah, we don't
yeah,
care.
yeah,
You're gonna go over here, you
yeah.
know,
That too.
which is I don't know. I don't personally agree with it, but I understand also why it happens. You know,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
this
yeah.
is why like the real winners of situations are the ones that are the most malleable, because when you have like some kind of structure, like no, but we're supposed to be here, you know, like well, there's a lot of places of the United States that are very nice. I'm not saying that they were moved to them, but I'm
Right.
saying that, functionally, a forced relocation isn't necessarily bad. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it could be done for the better. It probably wasn't in this case,
Yeah.
you know? But, yeah, I don't
It's
know. I
interesting
think it
shit,
might be
man.
much better to be malleable and, well, we live wherever we live and, it works there. I've lived all over the United States. Cold places, warm places, windy places, dry places, wet
What's
places.
what's your favorite type
Yeah.
of place to live? I know you're not digging the 120-degree heat there, so that can't be it.
I would rather 120-degree heat than like negative 12-degree cold.
Yeah, fair enough, man. That extreme season change in the Midwest and stuff, I mean, that's something else. You got to be built for that shit.
Yeah. I mean, in a certain way, like some people like places because they have seasons. But there's a reason to like a place simply because, like, well, but it's always, pretty nice. Like, I like the
Yeah, no
temperatures it
doubt.
is all the time. A lot of the people, the whole like the California lifestyle. I don't live the California lifestyle right because when it's this hot out, you're like supposed to be at the beach, barely wearing any clothes, and it has all kinds of positives that come with it. You know what
Hmm.
I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I don't do that, and that's my problem. You know what I mean? That's not a problem
yeah,
with California. I'm using it wrong.
yeah,
You know, and I understand that, so I don't really
yeah.
have a problem with it. You know,
Mm,
I would just prefer if it was 80. That would be perfect for me. You know.
mm. Yeah, I think I like the warmth, but I also can't lose. Like even being down there for 10 days, it dawned on me how much I really appreciate the water that's everywhere around here in all its
Sure.
forms. I've got Lake Washington in one direction, I've got the Sound the other direction, both within like 10 minutes of where I live, and all the way up and down. I mean, friends and family are all like near water or lots of greenery. And even though I'm in the
Sure.
saddle, there's Seattle, there's still a decent amount of greenery and all that stuff around. So like being down there, I'm like, yeah, it's warm, but it's just it's just missing when we really, if you get down to the, I don't know, again, the morphogenic fields or those different contributing factors of the environment, it's just a different energy. It's more dry. It's more, I don't know, it's just different, you know?
It's definitely the desert, and Washington is not. You know,
Yeah, not at all.
like
It just
that's
feels
one thing that's
significantly
weird about
different.
like southeastern Washington and why people from southeastern
Yeah.
Washington always feel like in a certain way like geographically misunderstood. You know, like
Yeah.
we used to make jokes about this all the time because like people from other places would be like, "Where are you from?" And you're from like Washington, and they're like, "Oh, okay, yeah, I know Washington," and they see an image of like the United States Capitol in their head because they're thinking
Yeah.
D.C. And you're like, "No, not that Washington, the state." And they're like,
Yeah.
"Okay, I get what you mean." They see a picture of the Space Needle and Seattle,
Yep.
and you're like, "No, like a different kind of Washington." Like
Yeah. You have
it's
to go through a
it's a
third layer.
imagine a desert sagebrush and then like an atomic cooling tower plume. I'm talking about like that kind of Washington. That's what my part of
It
Washington
is
looks like that I'm in.
totally different. Totally different. Leavenworth's
Yeah.
right on the border too. I mean, you go one direction, you're in the mountains and the
Yeah.
greenery and all the rivers and shit towards, but towards here, towards the sound. The other direction, it's everything you're talking about.
Yeah. Washington has three like distinct different areas with what is like Eastern Washington, Central Washington, and Western Washington. They're fucking dramatically different.
Yep,
Yeah.
it's true. Have
So
you ever been to Cooley, Grand Cooley Dam?
yeah.
That's
Yeah.
cool. I went there with my dad. He has friends of his had a place that was just like up the hill and whatever. I mean, really not very far away at all. And we stood there. We stayed there for a while, but that was cool. Went to the museum stuff that was there and just being around it, man. It's pretty intense, man. Being around those big dams or big, just massive, construction realities that we've done in 3D is just pretty intense and impressive.
Yeah, and that one's especially interesting because the town's like built around the dam. You
Yeah.
know, like the
Eh,
town feels like the dam feels like the centerpiece of the town. I mean, the fucking town's even named after it. You know,
right. Well, and
it's
it's gridded out too. So where the architects and the higher paid workers lived in this nicer kind of white picket fence like town, then you had all the other workers on the other side of the river. Their cheaper locations are bringing their
they
being there
took like
talking about
wrong side of the tracks to the whole nother level. They were like, we're gonna put them on the entire other side of a
side of the
body of
river.
water. Like,
Yeah.
get the fuck out of here. You guys stay on that side. Us
Yeah.
smart folk will stay over here. Is it? And it's weird because we talked about like the forced relocation. Like if you for okay, so I've worked, known a lot of people that like they went and worked out on like the oil fields or whatever for
Yeah, North Dakota
Halliburton,
and stuff.
and they end up in really some hellacious fucking place that no human would really ever want to be, and they're
Mhm.
there for like months on end, and it's totally just their choice, you know. Halliburton's like, yeah, so we'll give you like fucking tons of money to go live in this terrible place and work all day. You down with that? And they're like, yeah, okay. And then they get relocated over there. Like, if you got
Yeah.
forced to move to that place, oh, you'd fucking hate it.
Yeah.
Like, that would be terrible, you
Yeah, it's
know?
all about the mindset and that stuff too. If you know you're going in for 3 months, for a year, for 2 years, you're gonna go do whatever the fuck they want you to do, go wherever the fuck they want you to go because 'cause you're making a shitload of money. Like, you just don't give a
Sure.
fuck, you just go. But, yeah, it's times and seasons. They're putting frameworks on that, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it's all like, well, that's kind of saying that, like, when we add the kind of like the perception of reasoning, right? Then we see that, like, the relocation thing is really actually more of a perception than anything. And
Yeah?
when you look at it like that, I mean, well, realize their forced relocation wasn't really the savage thing. The savage thing was the alternative. Yeah.
Being slaughtered.
Right. Yeah, because
Yeah.
the alternative was fucking move or die,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah.
And so now like that, now that's like pretty harsh, you
A little
know.
bit.
The relocation ain't so bad intrinsically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
maybe not like that
potentially.
though. You know, like anything that you say to somebody, it's like either do this or die. Like, wow,
Yeah,
we're
that
getting
that
pretty
would
harsh
be
here.
like,
Like,
the ultimatum is the part that there's a
yeah,
concern. Like, "Oh, you're forcing?"
especially like a mortal ultimatum. Like, wow,
I appreciate your input. That's an interesting idea. Yeah, and you're going to do it or die. Oh wait, I
yeah,
don't appreciate your idea that much. You need to get the fuck out of here.
yeah, no, yeah.
Yeah, that's a hard no.
In a certain way, though, they are completely right. The people who chose to move them, I guess you would call it, in the sense that they did have a recognition that like your culture and our culture is not going to mix together, and the reality of this situation is our culture's taking over this area. In fact, we already have. You need to move. You know,
Uh-huh.
if it had not already been taken over their culture, which this like, well, here's a hot take. You know, What if the Trail of Tears, which we're supposed to like, feel really bad for the Native Americans, what if the fault of that actually goes on to their chiefs and the people who were supposed to be responsible for their tribes that ended up leading them to a position through trust, treaty, and, allowing themselves to be deceived? I mean, maybe they should be held a little bit accountable for the fact that they led their tribe to a place where that all happened?
Yeah,
Maybe.
there's a lot of nuances in there, I imagine, for
The
sure. I don't think
interesting
it's a
thing is
black
I
and white
can
thing.
pretty much guarantee you that those chiefs that I'm referencing, they definitely feel that way about themselves. At some point in time, they were like, fuck, dude, I kind of failed my people here, you know?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I always think that we should be like, if we're going to start blaming shit, let's be equal with the blame. Let's make sure the blame's actually getting put
Or
where it's supposed to
or
be,
just make it more high resolution. That's all. I think the biggest thing with
That's why it ends up in
arguments.
the right place, right? Or in the wrong place because it's too fucking low resolution. We're like, oh,
Yeah.
it's all this person's fault.
Yeah.
Probably not.
And just zoom
Probably
in.
not.
It's like, okay, maybe okay, he was definitely wrong there, but there's other things, I guess. Now
Yeah.
that I'm zooming in a little bit, I guess, or
Oh,
whatever. It's
well, I
like just
can't believe we gave them these, polio blankets. I can't fucking believe they took them. You
yeah.
know what I mean?
Yeah,
Also, at the
yeah.
same time, I don't think we should have given them to them, but I also think, objectively speaking, they probably should not have taken those.
Yeah, but that's on a base level of like expectation of goodwill or benevolence or malevolence.
Ah,
And
yeah,
so
when you shouldn't have had that for those people.
well, right, but
You
because of
know?
those people, a chicken or the egg on some level, because of those people, you have to be apprehensive when you could be trusting and building coherence or constructive resonance with people with an
Yeah,
expectation of
well,
that,
you know
not
what
deception.
happens when you go around a bear and you're not apprehensive of the fact that it could rip your face off and it rips your face off? You don't blame the bear.
Right?
You blame the person who wasn't apprehensive about the bear. Well, he didn't
Sure, but
know.
the
He didn't
presumption
know
is
the bear. Look how nice
no,
the
no, no,
bear
no.
looked. It was all fluffy.
The presumption is other human beings that you're meeting for strange. It's the premise of like Star Trek and the Federation, like to seek out new civilizations, new cultures, and approach them in a way for just expanding cultural awareness and knowledge and getting to know people. And like, really, that's the
Yeah,
intention of
yeah.
going in. And so,
They didn't have that intention, though.
well,
When,
but that
the
ideally you can,
pilgrims showed
yeah, but
up
how would
over
they know
here.
that? So like say the natives do have that or different people or different cultures, but then governments step in or private companies, corporations, because that tribe lives next to well ley line or other things, let alone let's say gold or other things, they will be moving for personal interest, not because they. There could be a third option, like they're forcing them out for their own agendas. It's not like you can't merge cultures over time. All right, we're living here too, or we found out years later after we've settled here, you guys live here too, we can merge cultures. We can be grown-ups here and figure out to merge cultures. Why does it always go to this light and dark and domination and what's the word? The colonialism. It's just I get that's a if that's a narrative that's actually true or is prominent. I mean, it is prominent, but I think there's other cultures maybe we don't hear about how they actually settled things really well. But they like that's certainly history I don't understand. I
I
don't
mean,
understand
over
that
history, I
mindset
think we could say that
or relate
cultures
to.
weren't so good at handling things like that. There has
Clearly.
been
Or
there
they
has
handled it
been
very
war and
well, right?
fighting and shit
And
over
they're
that for when from the history we get taught from
right.
since like time immemorial. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even the fucking like the Sumerians were going to war and shit with
Right.
people. You
So
know,
they've been good at it from the beginning. Like the winners write the history, and the winners can also for the winners it's been good,
whoever was winning at that moment. But the fact
right?
that like you're already engaged in a battle and you haven't found some basically like higher way through basically a unitarian perspective that you could put the two things together to have one thing that was greater than the two things could have possibly been by themselves. Since that's never been the aim by my personal metric of relations, they all suck at it. All of them that end up going to war or they have a staunch ideology and ends up with kind of like a hard line of I believe this and if you don't believe the same thing then we can't mix. That's code word for I'm really fucking bad at interacting with other people who are different,
Yeah, no doubt.
and I'm not going to do anything about that. You know?
Yeah,
That is in no way, shape, or form an insinuation that really they're good at anything. It's an indicator they're really fucking bad at several things,
yeah.
you know?
They can still
But
be
like
good at other things. But
that's
that's
what
not
it
one of them.
is, you know. I mean, like I fucking did the martial arts thing like my whole life, and at the root of martial arts is like, look, we're not teaching you how to fight so that you can go fight people. You know that, right? Like that's not the
Hmm.
point of doing martial arts. The point of doing martial arts is so that you can win the inevitable fight against yourself. Like, that's the
Mm.
real point of martial arts. If you're taking this and you're going out there, like, if you're in martial arts very seriously to the point where, like, you have, like, a master, and that master is not only, like, teaching you how to do stuff, but is also teaching you ideology, and you go out and get in a fight with, like, some random kid at school, man, that motherfucker's gonna beat your ass. He's gonna
Mm-hmm.
beat your ass. Like, you're gonna come back in, he's gonna bop you on the fucking head. Like, what are you doing? Using, like, okay, so now let's see what it looks like when a trained person fights an untrained person. So you are now going to fight me, and we're gonna see who wins. And when I beat the fuck out of you, you'll understand why exactly what I've taught you. You shouldn't go use this on other people. What the hell is wrong with you?
Mm.
I've had my ass beat that way. It was a very good lesson.
Yeah.
You know, when you think you're tough, it's very beneficial to find out that actually there's other people out there that are way tougher than you. And by keeping yourself right sized about that, you don't use your strengths to oppress other people. You use your strengths to uplift other people, including yourself. And that's really like the mind of, in my opinion, an accomplished individual. And
Mm.
this, like, the whole fucking war thing, it just isn't that at all. It's
Yeah.
totally like a whole different direction off into reality. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Where it's
Yeah.
like me or you, we fight against each other. This is my stance. Well, this is my stance. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of martial arts you've been doing, but like if you look into things like Chi Sao, well, my stance is fucking determined by your stance, and your stance is just as important to my stance as my stance is to my stance. Like, it's all this big symbiotic dance. And
Mm.
realistically, like, I'm
Stance.
supposed to take your positioning into account when I determine my best positioning, even if you are my enemy.
Mm.
It's just the smartest thing to do in an engagement.
Yeah.
And it's, you do it even with yourself. Like, you're your own worst enemy. Treating yourself like your own worst enemy will not help you do better for yourself. But befriending the parts of you that are your own worst enemy will allow you a great insight into them, which gives you a lot of power over adjusting their function. And so the best thing to do to the enemy part of yourself is basically befriend it and accept how it works, see how it works, and try to, like, make sure it gets the things that it wants, but maybe in, like, a healthier way, you know? And it's
Mm.
only by some portion of yourself kind of, like, stepping in there and being like, all right, look, I'm going to look out for both of us. I'm going to put the battle to rest because I'm
Mm.
going to look out for both of us. I understand you're not looking out for me. I don't fucking care. I'll look out for myself. It's fine. I don't need you to do that. I'm going to look out for both of us. But this takes a very confident individual, one that believes that they are actually secure inside of themselves. Putting some kind of hard line and saying, no, I stand here and I won't change, that's an insecure position. People
Mm.
think that's a secure position, but firm positions actually ain't that secure over the long run. Like, yeah, you're standing there until I start launching nukes on that bitch. And then all of a sudden you're going to move out the way, huh? Yeah,
Yeah.
oh, look, oh, you ain't secure there after all, are you? Because it's very easy to hit something that stands in the same place. And if it's really
Mm.
willing to stand in the exact same place, you can actually take as long as you want to plan out exactly how you're going to hit it for maximum effect. And you can be sure that it hasn't moved. Because it's like, no, I fucking stand here and I'm not moving. And you're
Yeah.
like, okay, good. I'll be back when I have the perfect plan to destroy you. Not a good idea, you know?
Yeah.
Malleable and agile.
You're
That
like
is
water, my friend.
exactly. It's funny because I'm literally sitting there like thinking of movements inside of Jeet Kune Do
Mm.
that are all about embodying this. And like I have a picture of Bruce Lee doing martial arts in my head, and you're like, be like water, my friend. It's
You know what's
like,
funny on that? So Nate said, so we talked about that. That comes in our conversations, came up recently, and he reminded me of like one time, or he says, some I don't know if it was a Bruce Lee thing or something else, but he was talking about a quote of set the cup down, the cup of water down, instead of just keep holding on to it, letting things go, letting things move
mm-hmm.
through. Right. And I said, and at some point I said, or drink the water, like let it move through you, or like let it become you, or whatever. Right. Whatever. It was like really profound. But he
Sure.
reminded me of that today. And then I just said this thing. So cool synchronicity.
Yeah.
Your little thing.
That non-attachment is very important both inside of ourselves and outside of ourselves. And like outside of ourselves, it looks exactly like this ideology that you get locked into that I'm talking about. Even like inside of Taoism, it basically teaches directly against this That's the whole reason for the symbolism of the yin yang, and it's looking like a thing that one side is flowing into the other, and each side has a little bit of the other side, and all
Hmm.
this stuff is to basically demonstrate like the power inside the malleability of duality, which to the Western mind is a very like odd concept, because their look at duality is that there's a hard left and a hard right. And Taoism and, you know, non-duality thinking is really about how, like, yes, there is a hard left, but that creates the space for something to be hard right. And so it's actually working with the right, you know? Like, it's negative right. It's not left, it's negative right, you know? So we struggle with duality in the Western mind, it seems. We like our ideologies. We like our positions. This is why we like sports as much as we do. You know?
Hmm.
Like only
Yeah,
only only
competition,
modern Eastern cultures like
dichotomy.
sports as much as they do. The other ones liked martial competition, sure, but
Yeah.
sports, not so much.
Wouldn't the
You know?
Aztecs have that ball game?
Yeah, but that's a little different, isn't it? I
Well, if they
mean, the
all like got died and
guy
got sacrificed, then there's different consequences. But as far as
big old
a group
consequences
a
in
group sport,
comparison
they
to
was
like a sport.
enjoyed and watched.
Is it a sport though? You know?
What do you
I
call it? I
don't
mean, the
know that it
Coliseum was a sport, right? But it's a blood sport. Everybody's getting dying or slaughtered, right? I
was it
don't
a
know
sport?
how would you define this sport, I guess.
I don't
Some
know. Is a fight
people
to the death a sport?
to
I
some
don't know.
people, or they make a sport of it. Maybe that's the right terminology. When you can make a sport of anything that people are willing to, I guess, pay for and bet on. I don't know how else do you make a sport of
Sure. I,
something or
I
play
don't know.
together.
You know. I mean, what? How are you really defining sport in your life?
Yeah, like I
You
said, we
know.
got to figure that out.
That's the real question there. I understand that we get these terminologies of, you know, fighting is a blood sport. Like, sure, yeah, it's a sport that oftentimes includes blood,
Yeah.
you know. But
All
by
right.
that terminology, like, so is football or basketball or baseball or anything else, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, really anything you do with your body. Riding a motorcycle is a fucking blood sport because occasionally you wreck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. 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 I know
So,
what you mean.
I don't know.
I
I
hear you,
don't
bro.
really think of I think of fighting differently. Like when now like a boxer is an athlete, but when I think of athletes, I don't think of boxers. You know what I mean?
Hmm. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
So at the same time, like you wouldn't catch me standing in front of prime Mike Tyson and being like, "Look, bud, you're not an athlete. Sorry, you're a boxer."
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
no, I would not be doing that. I'm pretty sure you'd get
Speaking
pretty
of which,
annoyed at that. Doesn't
did
sound good.
you see he's getting back in shape now? He's got a fight, I think, in November. Mike
Yeah,
Tyson.
they're starting up this like well, like a legends boxing kind of thing.
Whatever, but he agreed to it, and he was after. He just went on Rogan again. It was like released in like the last week or something, and to talk about Rogan's been dying to ask him because I remember from the first interview and where Mike Tyson was talking about um, he talks about he wasn't ever going to do fighting again because it was just full on ego. Like he was just
Uh huh.
100%. That's how he survived. It was great. Just like he gets it, but now he's found like peace and he's done the 5-MeO, whatever, five DMT, MEO or MEO DMT or whatever, and like the other stuff he's done. He's had these experiences where so he's super chill, man. He's very kind of like childlike and simple and like we're cool, man.
Yeah.
And then this happens, and even Joe Rogan's like, "What the fuck? Last time we talked, like you never do that for that reason." And in the actual promo ad, it says something like when he's giving some semi-interview or something, and he says, I've given over to the ego gods within me," or something like some
Uh,
fucking cool ass phrase. It's like, holy shit, man. So he interviews him again. It's just a cool dialogue to hear his internal psyche and how he just like he processes all that while he's getting in this amazing shape. So
yeah. I really think I understand where he's coming from. I probably need to watch this to verify, but I had a very similar engagement with myself. I had a childhood that had a lot of fighting, whether it be from like martial arts or from I fucking living my life in the trap. There was a
mhm,
lot of like fighting inside of my life, and I had a lot of engagements with that too. And there was a point in time where I was like, okay, I'm not gonna fight anymore. Like it's an ego-driven thing,
mhm,
and well, basically, progressive work made me realize like, no, that part of you, you like that part of you. Why not? What's
yeah,
wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. I go into a ring with another willing combatant and I beat the shit out of him because I'm fucking good at it. And there's not really actually anything wrong with that because the other guy that walked in there, he was okay with walking in there.
yeah.
I mean, let's face it. Doesn't everybody on the planet know that it's a dumb idea to get in a boxing ring with Mike Tyson? Like, we know that, right?
Yes, I would never do that. I don't, how
Somebody's
much
going to
would
be
you?
willing to do
Is
it.
there an amount of money that you would pay that you would actually take to get
I
like
get
Mike
knocked out by Mike
Tyson?
Tyson for free.
Really?
Absolutely.
Why?
What a cool experience.
All right, I guess.
Getting knocked out ain't that bad, dude. It only hurts until it
I guess
stops. It's like maybe like a couple
if I were
days.
going to get knocked out, yeah, that'd be a way to do it. But it's not like, hey, Mike Tyson's in town. Will you knock me the fuck out, man? I'd really appreciate it.
Oh no, I'd actually fight him. I would just end up getting knocked out.
Okay.
You know, I'm
Yeah.
very realistic. Like I would like to fight Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
I
See, that's
it would be
different.
terrifying. I
Yeah.
would lose. I hopefully wouldn't die in the process. But we're
But
talking about
see,
arguably the
okay.
greatest fighter
So maybe
out,
it's not
Bruce
so
Lee
much
or
the
him.
story
That's
of
him,
like
right?
you get knocked out by Mike Tyson. It's the things leading up to it. Your experience of like you get experience firsthand how fucking fast he moves. It's one thing to see on
Oh
TV
man,
or like whatever. You get to see it.
yeah,
You get it. It's like you got that
terrifying.
experience before you got knocked out or whatever. You got to experience that shit. I mean, so for that reason,
Yeah.
I get it to experience
Let
it.
anybody who's watching this do not think for even a second that I'm under some kind of delusion that I would stand a chance with Mike Tyson in the ring. This dude would
He's just
destroy
thoroughly
me.
enjoying.
Okay.
Zach's talking about I thoroughly enjoy his way to getting knocked out, and it's important to
Even
talk
the
about that.
process of it.
Yeah.
Like, I've thought for so long about what it must be like to get knocked out by Mike Tyson. Then I would know. I would not think about that anymore. I'd be like, wow, that's like so much not like what I thought it was going to be like. It was way worse. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's probably way worse.
Yeah.
You know? So, but like, I don't know, man. Life's meant to be lived. And, that's fucking interesting. You know?
Yeah.
How cool would that day be? I mean, even the many days leading up to it, you would be like, dude, I'm actually, can you believe this, guys? I'm training to get in the ring with Mike Tyson right now, and people are like, you're an idiot, and you're like, I know, like, it's such a bad idea,
Yeah.
but like, isn't this cool? Like, I'm doing something
Yeah.
pretty
Yeah.
fucking weird right now, right? Like, it's
Yeah.
way cooler than most people's life. So yeah, you don't have to pay me at all.
I
It's
think
already payment.
based on something you said there, reminded me of something I think he said where he's talking about. I think one of the days when he worked out, I think it was the day he did one of the videos or something. He worked out like 110% or whatever, like flat out, and he hadn't been prepped to work this hard yet, and he just was insane by how sore he was and everything.
Mm,
But he thought he'd be at the end of the day, be the sore and all shit, and be like, "Fuck it, I'm done. I'm too old for this shit." He was totally expecting that, but it was totally the opposite. He's like, "Oh fucking, I'm all in. I'm doing this shit."
yeah, this is amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's important for him, a person like him, to live his life. I think at least this is what I saw in him while he fought.
Mm,
This dude was made to be a fighter.
mm.
Like it's in his fucking DNA. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And I think he's like, even when I saw this idea like that he would never fight, definitely in my mind I was like, I don't know about that, dude. You
Yeah.
know? Especially with some of the other stuff that he was saying at that time, because I really think like that's just who he is. You
Yeah.
know?
Have you
And
seen?
this is a lot of the way
Do you
that I
know
engage with it too.
Do you know
Like,
any of his
it's just who I
backstory?
am. I mean, I've heard him
Yeah.
talk about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because in the interviews he does, it's just interesting to hear his take on why he is the way he was and the way he was shaped. I mean, nature and nurture in his dynamic, and like, the guards he got paired up with, trainers, different people were like the right ones to, help cultivate his life upbringing and traumas or whatever shit he's gone into, right into all of his neurological imprinting, I guess, from a pretty young and intense age into
Yeah,
fighting and this dynamic, and then how to channel, the ego gods or that whole shit, man. It's pretty
yeah,
fascinating. And for him to be able to the full spectrum of that, the Mike Tyson everybody know or knew, I guess, much long time ago now, biting off the year of it was Evander Holyfield, right?
yes,
So it was okay. See, that's even like for me, I was young enough at that time, wasn't really paying super attention, but like and it's just the craziness of like the assault charges and rape or whatever crazy Mike Tyson to
yeah,
just a fucking teddy bear, like on some level, like he just really changed and really, like, you see that in the first interview with Rogan, it was a year or two ago, and then whatever, it's just, and then to see him get back into it and go back in with now becoming this more balanced person, if you will, and in his own estimation or what he would say, and then back
hmm
into it. And so yeah, it's really cool. You'll probably really appreciate the dialogues.
I appreciate everything Mike Tyson has to say because he's an incredible specimen.
No
You know,
doubt.
he's
Yeah.
he's different than most people because he's gone all in on something.
Yeah.
You know, and I really I appreciate the way that he's effectively approached exploring himself. Not even necessarily that he's like chosen to make use of plant medicines, but really more just like the progress that he's made and the rate at which he's made that progress shows very clearly to me that he's doing it because he wants to do it, not
Yeah.
because he feels like he's supposed to do it or needs to do it or anything. He just wants to do it, and he's taking a look at what he looks like, and that's what it looks like. And like these kinds of flips are indicative of that. Like at one point in time, he's looking at himself, and it looks to him like, well, I'm not supposed to be doing that. And later, well, actually, it looks like I am supposed to be doing that.
Yeah.
Cool, dude. That's what you looked like then, and this is what you look like now. That's
Yeah.
great, dude. That's wonderful. That's that malleability. That's part of the reason why he was so fucking good in the ring. The dude moves like an animal, man. Like he's all over the goddamn place, and he's all tiny, and then suddenly, boom, she like explodes out of it. It's oh my god, man. Like yikes.
Awesome.
That's a yikes. I've thought about being in the ring with Mike Tyson like so many times, and just like had such a good time thinking about how bad I'd get my ass beat.
Cool.
It's amazing, dude. Like I have
Yeah.
such a huge respect for people like if you've fought in your life, then you understand that like that space is like chaotic as shit. So
Mm.
people who are able to be like centered, very ordered, and they're like a calculated machine in that place, oh, it's phenomenal.
Mm.
Like that requires so much out of a person to be like so focused under that kind of pressure. It's just amazing. Like it really
Mm.
just builds your mind in a way that I don't know that anything else does. It's really cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, he's good. He's
Interesting
good.
shit.
He's actually like, for my money, he's the best boxer ever. Like I think Prime Tyson cleans a fucking Prime Ali out every
Mm.
day of the week, in my personal opinion. I also am of the opinion that in an actual fight, Bruce Lee cleans out both of them simultaneously. But that's a
Nice. I can
different
dig that.
story
I can dig
entirely.
that hierarchy for sure. I mean, that resonates.
Yeah,
I put my
Bruce
money on
Lee's
that.
not fair. And the crazy thing is
Yeah.
probably the only reason that I think Bruce Lee stands at the top of some kind of hierarchy is only because of my own ignorance. I bet you there's a guy out there that's just so unbelievably good in comparison to Bruce Lee. We've never seen him or heard of him. He
Yeah.
practices every day, all day, and does not talk to anyone. It's all he does. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And he's probably just absolutely phenomenal. But
Yeah.
like it's inevitable at this point in time. Bruce Lee was like great in like what, like mid 1960s. I mean, fuck, it's 2020
Yeah.
now. That
Yeah.
was 50 something years ago.
And
You know what I mean?
even like Jordan, I mean, like as amazing as he was, is whatever. There's like LeBron's or there's people come in and set the bar at like, sorry, Jordan just never could have done that. Sorry. This is a whole other level of like, so like imagine there's Bruce Lee's, but other generations come in and take it to another level. Like they were massive and they have stuff that will always be remembered because it's worth being remembered. But like there's other things that have been progressed upon those using that as a platform, if you will, in
Yeah,
consciousness.
absolutely. Yeah, we always give ourselves an opportunity to do something better, no matter how well we do it, because better gets established by just being more effective than whatever that was.
Yeah.
You know, like it's inevitable that someone's going to do
Yeah.
better than you if you create the platform of doing the best. Everyone's shooting for your fucking spot at that point in time.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's an interesting thing that like you only really get to experience if you like have set a record in something.
Mm.
All of a sudden, in a certain way, like everybody is focused on taking what you have. You know what I mean? It's like all the people who take it really serious, they want that record, you know? And
Mm.
while they're like your friend and all this stuff like that, like, yeah, they want to steal your shit. You know what I mean? And it's okay. Like, that's what the competition's about. They're trying to
Yeah.
steal my shit. I'm not going to let them, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And that really drives that progression, is that whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
That
got
makes
my
sense.
record. I don't want them to steal it, and I'm gonna stop them. This is why we end up with like you bring up Michael Jordan, and we have this whole like the argument is always ends up coming down to between like the staunch, is Michael Jordan the best ever? Yes, I think so. And the staunch, well, but I think LeBron James is better. This conversation almost always boils down to like, well, but they played in two different leagues, and this is like
Hmm.
this is totally because like they didn't actually get to defend their space against the other one. If
Totally.
that had happened, we would fucking know.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But
100%.
even if they had played in the league at the same time, they would have been like, well, LeBron's a forward. Mike's a guard, so they're not really manning each other up so much, even though LeBron basically plays
Yeah.
forward like a guard.
Well, even like
But,
that's why we're just bringing over a career, those dynamics. But yeah, I think there's a lot of validity in a lot of that. I mean, they played in different eras. People are, I think the ball players in general, are probably on average, not that I've looked into it, can imagine a few inches taller and just 20, 30 pounds heavier at least. They're like finely tuned, refined, athletic human beings, way more than they were in Jordan's era 20 years ago, 30 years ago. That
Sure.
just like, so there's like a whole other level of engagement of athleticism and reach that they could adapt. I think because they're amazing athletes, they would adapt. So to put all the greats for across time in their own like all-star, 7-game competition or some shit and let them play and figure each other out. But I'm just saying, it's just different
I think
eras
we
and
would
different
come to
times.
learn that Wilt Chamberlain wasn't just that good because it was a bunch of the other dudes were a bunch of white guys. We'd come to learn that he was actually just really fucking good at basketball.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's a
there's
really good
there's some there
chance.
for sure. Hey,
Yeah.
so I got a question based on what the show started with, and I'm trying to quiet, Mike. Why are you being so staticky? Hold on. There. Oh shit. All right, be careful. Um, so 9/11 for you. Where were you? Where were you on 9/11? That's fucking 19 years ago. That's a long time.
I Tri-Cities, Washington, at my mom's house. You know.
Like, okay, did you like? To me, it was like super. I don't know. I had no awareness or expectation or understanding what was going on, especially at that time. It wasn't till a few more years, like understanding even false flags and different connections of just other things. You didn't even open my awareness. So I was like, I was really naive when I experienced that. 15, I think, years old, and it was it
hmm
was just shocking, like a switching of a timeline or an anchoring in of a reality that you could tell affected everything from now on in major ways.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my experience of it probably was a little different than the standard person my age because I basically had my mom standing there like a goddamn propaganda loudspeaker telling me exactly how basically this substantiates all of these conspiracy theories and dot 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 dot, dot and basically
Wow.
giving the outline of what type of dynamic this was going to lead to, which all came true, and all of these things. In fact, she even at the time of the second fucking plane hitting a building, straight up prophesized that shit. She's
Yeah.
sitting here, she goes on this like fucking rant, and then she ends up stopping the rant it with, and you know what would be really fucking funny is if a plane hit the other tower right now and fucking boom, dude, right on the screen. Me and my buddy Justin are like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
Like,
No
are you
shit,
kidding
man.
me? You're
No
some kind of
shit.
weird magician, because she literally like said that, pointed
Yep.
at the screen, my eyes went to the screen, and live telecast.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Okay, so think about this. So
what?
think about this. Because your mom was tuned into that information or trying to understand those morphogenic fields and the information therein ahead of time, as it was actually anchoring into 3D. So a few seconds ahead of time, they were shown the heart can perceive things at least 6 to 11 seconds before our conscious mind reacts to it. So she's already tuned into kind of the agendas of what could happen. Now that it's anchoring in this already is happening, it's reducing the variables or the probabilities of what.
Aaron got disconnected. See you later, Aaron. I'm sure he'll be back in a second. Yeah, I mean, it's in the situation of my mom is pretty deep end with the conspiracy theory stuff, and even like the 9/11, there was a lot of build up to that point in time where it was, let's see, what year 9/11 was 2000. So yeah, we had a pretty solid building all the way up to that point from pretty much, what was it, 92? Is that when Desert Storm started? Oh, 1990 was Desert Shield. Desert Storm started 91. Yeah, like basically from the beginning of the Gulf War, it was very obvious that there was an agenda being carried out, pretty much. And a lot of people inside of the conspiracy theory space had already kind of mapped exactly how this agenda would play out. And at the time of 9/11 happening, the kind of like core conspiracy theory community was really kind of in the process of just waiting for some false flag, you know? So
Mhm.
when that ended up happening, all of these people were like, "Ha! I told you. I can't
Yeah.
believe they did this much,
Dude, you
but
know what's
wow."
funny? You know what's funny? It's like living in different eras of conspiracy theorists. Like there's generational connections, interconnectedness that the hippies have, right? Because of their movements they were a part of and how it affected and changed their generation. And by conspiracy theorists are journalists, different earlier on that just got killed or whatever actually found these stories out. And now we make movies about them. But conspiracy theorists that actually find these things out, that there's a whole different flavor of that era post 9/11 for the next like 10 years the flavor of conspiracy theorists that came out. Then the next, like this last 10 years after 2020, I guess, like a whole different flavor. It's just interesting. And now with the whole COVID shit, man, it's just new waves of similar stuff, tactics of the disinformation on one side too, or the over pumping stupid shit that just makes the other side look bad. I don't know.
Yeah.
There's a lot of shit there,
Inside of
man.
the conspiracy theory space, the most interesting thing to look at right now is the function of this like QAnon thing. Because like
Still, yeah, too.
if you're a staunch conspiracy theorist, you're approaching that with massive levels of skepticism because it basically claims to originate from inside the government, and the staunch conspiracy theorist doesn't trust a government any farther than they could throw the fucking
Right.
earth. I don't give a fuck what they say that they are. If you're from inside the government, that means you're the fucking enemy.
Mm.
So, and but the not as staunch conspiracy theorist, well, it kind of actually adds some credibility for them. You know, they're like, well, it's the inside track. We got somebody
Mhm.
on the inside that's sharing the secrets with us, and like, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't really be a secret if somebody on the inside was sharing it with you, but you know,
Mhm.
nevertheless, I don't know. I think it does something for some people, but then for another batch of people, yeah, jury's still kind of out on it, and probably will remain out on it
Yeah, just
forever unless it proves itself to be exactly the bullshit they thought it was. If it's not that, they'll probably remain skeptical of it forever.
yeah.
Yeah. So, but it's such a weird emergence. The idea, and I mean, it just reeks of an extremely smart play in terms of a controlled dialectic. Like this is like a if you can't beat them, join them type of strategy, right? So
Mm.
the conspiracy theorist is constantly popping up forever, right? We're talking, this is way back into history, right? Like, there's always been the people who are theorizing about how some type of archonic structure is maneuvering things in order to get their own aim. That we got people, I mean, the fucking Inquisition was about this versus religion in a
Yeah,
certain way, and that's like the fucking 1400s, right?
yeah,
Like, this is like a long time we've been doing this whole thing. And so the conspiracy theorist is going to keep rising with the advent of the internet, which is coincidentally right around this same time. If we were talking about like the Desert Storm, Desert Shield, 1990, right about 1990 is when the internet starts really hitting the scene. Somebody who's like smart about that recognizes like, we got a little bit of a problem here. There's now like a forum where any old person on the planet could get an awful lot of people to look at their shit. And so, in the
yeah,
event that there is someone who has some type of agenda that someone might theorize about the conspiracy of that agenda, this is like a danger zone for them. And
yeah,
it's like a problem that needs to be addressed if you don't want that to happen. Well, I think they tried to address it in a whole lot of ways, and they're really balancing a thing here because like you can't shut down free speech, but you need to stop the free from saying that kind of shit. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
like that's obviously a difficult balance right there. So you're trying to stop people from talking about that, or really trying to stop people from being able to hear someone talk about that, but you can't stop them from talking. And the internet is like growing and spreading faster than you can possibly keep your eyes on it. And so
yeah,
that puts you into a place where like functionally you can't beat them. So the obvious choice is to then join them, right?
yeah,
So come forward as basically the a conspiracy theorist yourself, perhaps an entity of conspiracy theorists who seem to have the inside track, and as a byproduct of that seeming inside track, they can navigate the perspective of those who listen to this bandwidth of information. It's exactly what I would do if I was trying to attack conspiracy theorists. In fact, it was an idea that I had well before Q came along because I
mhm,
was analyzing basically the conspiracy theorist community and going, where are our fucking weaknesses? And where's the weaknesses? Is that these people believe some off the wall shit if it comes from the right place without really actually passing any skepticism over it whatsoever. If the right people talk inside of the conspiracy theory world and say this is happening, within like a month, every fucking buddy says that's happening. And
right,
that's dangerous.
right,
That's extremely dangerous.
right,
Really, like, thankfully, some of the people that do hold that position, they've pushed an agenda of like, look, you need to critically think about all the data that comes across your palette. Doesn't matter
Right.
whether I say it or somebody else. It
That's why I
doesn't
like
matter
pulling
who
from
says it.
multiple sources too, and seeing where ideas seem to originate or interconnect. Because if it's in the morphogenic field, just because one person has spoken out, if they have an influence, then the more people are going to be aware of it. It literally or increases the, I don't know, density of that reality, or it's more tune inable. So if people are meditating or whatever they're tuning into, it's I've seen different dynamics where across the world there's been different ideas, things that have come out of the ethers, if you will, but it's not. It's I don't know. So I think I say it can be agendized and intentionally used for sure. I think there's
Hmm.
a reality to that generic or organic, I guess, manifestation also.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know at the end of the day
Yeah.
whether the Q thing is true or
Oh, the
false.
Q. So, like, I've seen enough from Q that they deal a lot in the Socratic method. So they point people in directions that I think are better worded. Let me say, I'll say this: most of the Q posts that I've seen or seen dissected for a handful of different people that I feel like have done it well over the years, and just tune in every so often and see what they've chosen out of that shit. Um, but they ask better questions than a lot of the memes do. A lot of the memes sometimes are just like the arguments are so oversimplified and it just makes people look uneducated. It's
Sure.
not helpful. And
Yeah.
so some of the questions on the things in the post there, it's like shit, those are actually people are actually interested. It's not giving the answer, but it's pointing you to do like research and directions people would literally never have thought of. And it led into a lot of the exposing of all the pedogate stuff and just a lot of the stuff going on. That seems to be that's been very consistently coherent with exposing those movements and deep state stuff.
Sure, of
And
course, twist of the year is if there is in fact no pedogate, no kids are being trafficked, adrenochrome does not exist in any capacity, and the entire storyline of that was actually a fabricated ruse to get a whole bunch of people who wanted to believe in an aggrandized story that made them feel that there was some kind of glory for them to obtain in life, to focus on something else instead of all this other shit that we were actually doing. In which case, then you'll be like, wow, this thing was fucking misleading. You know what I mean? Like, all the people that came to ask questions, well, they're barking up the wrong tree. Altogether possible. I don't know. Like, this
well, it's
is one of the
possible a
big
narrative come
problems
out.
with,
That's not
like,
necessarily
with the,
possible.
the Q thing. Like,
Yeah. Well,
there's
we've also agreed,
if
like, on the
I
whole
say right
dynamic
now,
that
hot take, there's not proof that kids are being trafficked, and the staunch Q supporter is here, they're like, you're fucking crazy. Yes, there is. There's so much fucking proof out there. And I'm like, okay, put it inside of court. That's the
right,
problem. Like, if you go inside of court and you're putting it in front of basically like
International Tribunal for National
these
Justice
kinds
are the
of
ones who have
rules,
been doing that.
have they?
Yes.
You
You go
got
to their
proof?
channel. Yes,
Court dockets and shit?
yeah, they go to the if you go to the channel, they go through all of it, and they
So
hold
the issue with this shit is that a lot of that evidence is what inside of legal matters is considered circumstantial. And
right,
circumstantial evidence doesn't prove shit.
right.
It doesn't prove anything at all. But to the layman, circumstantial evidence seems to prove something. And
No,
this is
yeah, I
why
guess
inside
the
of
layman's
court
really
it's
that. I think the layman's a little more smarter than that. Not me, but
I
like,
disagree.
all right,
The average human is not very smart, unfortunately. Not very educated. That's for sure. Ability to actually actuate themselves and put what intelligence they have, like put that rubber to the road. They lack a lot of the tools to do that. They're very engaged
yeah,
oftentimes in like blame or externalization concepts,
right, right.
ideas of things like luck. All of these
But I
lead
guess
to a
okay,
person not making a choice to really be that PowerPoint
okay.
inside of their reality.
Here's maybe a nuanced variance on that or whatever. That I do believe, like the quote from Men in Black that he's like, the people. Why don't you tell the people they can handle it? And he said, no, people are dumb, panicky animals, right? But
They are.
he's a person is smart and can be reasoned with, but people are dumb, panicky animals, and like so. I think that applies too. And
the
you're also
the
mass
biggest issue
disseminating.
where we have a nuance of this is sometimes even if you separate the animal from the herd, it still acts like it's in the herd. And
Yeah,
so
for
it's still
sure.
acting like a people, not a
Sometimes.
person.
Yeah, but I think that you have the opportunity
A
to. I think
lot
with
in the
people
United States.
is
Like
the
when we
one
say
on.
sometimes, realize that number is actually more frequent than not. So,
Well, I mean, interactions too. I think are more common. The one-on-one interactions, or I guess even like the podcast we're doing. So it's not like a dialogue where I mean I've done this a lot in different podcasts or different things I've listened to because I'm listening. might get offended at something, and I counter argue in my own head to the person, but I continue listening, or I rewind or whatever, but I'm able to process that through on a one-way dynamic. And so I
Hmm.
think, um, shoot, what was I getting to on that? I don't know. That was good. What I said was good, I guess. I totally lost the trail that I was on.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, we don't know what's true. The real, like, the staunch conspiracy theorist is really at core not a conspiracy theorist, but like a really staunch skeptic.
Yeah, or just
You
or
know.
journalist. You can call it a journalist, I guess. I don't know why. I don't know if there's a degree for that, so that's where people get some. There's some prestige around that, I guess, in that title. But really, is how good are you at being a journalist or researching, investigating, again, to what end, until you're satisfied with the answers on whatever it is you're looking into, and how that affects your life and the things you care about knowing, because there's really infinite rabbit holes and fractal rabbit holes upon rabbit holes. And the cool
Especially
thing
when
is,
you're in the realm of potential, which is functionally what when we dubs a person a conspiracy theorist, they're pointing towards hypothesis and then trying to see whether or not that hypothesis is true. Almost always. This is why the really functional way to do it is not have hypothesis, just follow the
yeah,
money around and see what it
yeah,
does.
right.
You know? And with that, you get a little bit better information than the ones that hypothesize what's happening and then try to prove that it's happening. That can lead to some pretty extreme results,
But I
both
think
in
I'll
the
say,
laboratory and in real
so
life.
one of the people I really appreciated in the Christian paradigm, when I was listening to those, and he was dealing with a lot of SRA, DID victims and doing counseling with them and sessions with them and progressing, and he was having to change his biblical theology, what he believed about the Bible and how things are supposed to work, and spiritual realms or in other demonic stuff, or things they've been through, these rituals, and how to even deal with that, or the psyche and whatever. And progressively over years, as him doing his podcast and teaching these things and talking about these things as he's learning them or going through them, constantly having to, I mean, I remember steps along the way, me too, like if certain people, like in the Christian dynamic, even thought this was real, you'd be shunned or whatever, because he had to, based on his experience, not just what he wanted to be true or thought to be true, because otherwise he had to rule a lot of this stuff out and call the people crazy. But like, no, these are real experiences. There's a lot of them. There's a lot of overlaps here. There's a lot of real things here that I can't deny. I can't
Hmm.
fit into my box. Therefore, my box has to change. And so he
Right.
did. So he applied the text in different ways that it continually demolds, but he's constantly having to challenge. And I think that's, I don't know, I think that's good for human beings to do. Any
Yeah, I mean,
subject.
you should constantly be challenging your beliefs. Like the truth doesn't need you to support it. It proves itself to be true. Really, the most effective way to ensure that you are straight and true in your life is to test that a lot. You know, make it prove itself. The truth never has a problem with proving itself.
And I think
People who are telling lies do, though.
on the Q thing, and we're both in agreement. We talked about this before. It's like, I think I forget that this is associated with them and their thing. Trust the plan. It's like, don't trust nobody's plan. I'll watch you as you tell people to trust the plan and see what else you're saying, because that's some shit.
Yeah,
To trust the plan. I'm not trust my plan.
unbelievably skeptical of anyone
Yeah,
who
I'm
would
like,
fucking
I'm not
say
like I'm
that.
bored with that kind of shit. It's interesting to look at them subjectively at certain releases, and I see how it affects people. And it seems to me be overall kind of more positive than the other ways that some of this truth or whatever is being disseminated.
Yeah.
So, and on that dynamic to the Patriot, like the only thing, the thing that really, I don't know, I've kind of gotten over it. The just the Patriot programming propaganda, or the Patriot propaganda. Whether it's pro mask or something about doing your duty or comparing. There's a funny one of the funny videos or
We do a lot
parody
of weird
videos.
shit with that patriot thing. I mean, realize that the original terminology of patriot was intended to mean one who upholds the Constitution.
Right,
And, well, the Constitution don't say nothing about wearing a mask. And if we are to take abstractions from the Constitution about that, it says I don't have to. So to say that
right.
wearing a mask is patriotic, yeah,
Oh,
not by
I know, and like,
definition, it's not.
and watching them just at different propaganda campaigns to appeal to that audience, to tug on those
Yeah,
strings of perception that's that it resonates at a core, like, neurological level for them, as like we're responding with good or bad, like
yeah.
whatever, like at a core level. It's
So a
interesting to
lot of
just
the
see it
heavy
play out.
hitters inside, I mean, this gets passed around now in that Q environment as being basically like the greatest compliment you could give to a person. Thank you, patriot.
Oh
And they're
man.
like, yes, think the Patriots, like, they're fucking all serious about it because they've
Yeah,
been sold this agenda. While it may be true, I don't fucking
yeah,
know. But what they've been
still
sold
an
is
agenda.
this idea that, like, the true patriot cares about what's happening with the United States, and at this point in time, the only way to do that is basically through a subversive agenda that is spearheaded by an anti-sect community from inside the security departments of the United States, known as Q, that has direct contact with the president. So to be a patriot is to be a person who is associated with that. And since they like all that association and the sound of it, they fucking
Mhm.
love the word patriot right now. It was only back in 1990 where basically people told me, for instance, I was completely unpatriotic while I was literally in the process of working with my mother and other people to ensure that people of the United States had their constitutional rights upheld, while
Mm.
other people were telling me I'm not a patriot. I'm like, dude, I literally live the life of a patriot. I fight legal battles to ensure that the Constitution is upheld for the people who are protected by it. But I'm not a patriot because
Yeah,
I think there's a possibility that our government isn't actually entirely
right,
installed
yeah.
for us. That makes me not a patriot. I don't think you know what that word means.
Yep,
You know what I mean?
agreed. Yeah, no
You're
doubt.
fucking tripping.
No
So
doubt,
it's
man.
funny because, like, all the shit
It's
that I
funny,
talked about back then, man, it's all fucking true now. Everybody knows it's true now.
right?
Everyone knows that.
What does that feel like to have that settle in over the last however long, months or year or however long it's been settling in, that's
It
all like
doesn't really, and in a certain way, it's kind of unsettling because back
yeah, yeah,
before that, I had things that I knew, and I
yeah,
knew them, and when I shared them with other people, they're like, "You're fucking nuts. That's never gonna happen. That's so unpatriotic of you, you fucking tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist." And
uh-huh,
now, many years later, it turns out I was accurate. I have a whole other stack of things that I know, just like I knew those things that
yeah,
are still active here now, that people call me a tinfoil hat conspiracy theorist that needs to get the fuck out of here with that crazy shit for
yeah.
exactly that. And really, honestly, my message for all of you is I appreciate your opinion. I'll see you in 20 years. I already know where it goes. Like,
Yeah,
there has been agendas that, like, we're talking macro societal agendas.
yeah,
These are very large vehicles. Okay, if they're going this way, they don't just suddenly go that way. That's not the
right,
way that it works. They take a very slow time to move. And so
yeah,
even if they started getting moved today, a whole lot of the ground that they were going to cover, they are inevitably going to cover, even if it's in the process of changing right now.
yep,
So, regardless of that, there's all kinds of stuff that's inevitably going to happen as
yeah,
a byproduct of that. And a lot of that at this point in time, unfortunately to report, looks a lot like you getting your rights taken away. Hopefully, not to the point of martial law where they're completely gone, but realize
right,
if it ends up not going there, there's someone that you should be thanking, and you're probably just not sure who it is. Because it
mm,
was headed towards that at some point in time. All the legislation was getting put in the same place. All the steps were taking place to go to that position. And in very many ways, it looks like actually what we have right now was basically the entire, like, COVID, social distancing, got to stay here. You can't go to these other places, 14-day quarantines in the event that you do go there. All this shit. That looks a lot like basically a Fisher Price version of the martial law that was already said that it was going to get sold to you.
a little
And
bit.
people said, nothing like that would ever happen. This is a free country, they say, until they got to 2020 and they realized that they're not actually supposed to leave their house. And if they do, they need to wear this thing on their face, right? And it's like,
Right?
are you sure that this is a free country, right?
Yeah.
Like, you're instructed by what are basically like, well, you don't have to follow them according to the legislation of it, but if you don't follow it, we're going to put you in jail.
What do you
Wait,
think?
what?
Okay, okay, since we're this much closer to, away from the riots that were going on in LA the day I left your place, I was watching, like, on the news in the airport and that shit going on to where how much closer we are to the election now. What do you feel like, how that's gonna play out between now and the election?
Hmm. I, I have to be honest that I've kind of quit paying attention.
Yeah, yeah,
In all fairness, like, I realized that a lot of my time was getting consumed with trying to figure out what was going on with all
yeah,
of that.
Yeah, yeah,
And I just like, I had to realize that inside of my life and what happens in my life, none of that matters. It
yeah,
really doesn't matter who wins, where it goes, what they do. I don't really operate inside of that culture anyways. I've been
yeah,
functioning as basically counterculture or sub society or the underground for
yeah.
like literally like my entire life. Like I don't really actually care what happens on the surface. I might be educated about it in some cases, but I don't actually care,
Yeah.
you know? I I I don't like we're talking about a presidential election here. I've been saying since 1990 that the presidential election is a fucking bipartisan farce where they convince you that your opinion means something through a dialectic that clearly shows that it does not mean anything, where we all engage in this battle to elect a figurehead that is nothing more than some invisible man's fucking puppet. That's literally all that it is. So it's like people think that this is important. It's not important at all who is the president of the United States. The president has no fucking control over the United States. Never has,
Mhm.
never will. Never has. That's why they've always had the Senate and the Congress there. There's always been an electoral college. There's all these kinds of like group things that come together. The president does not have express power to do much of anything at all. And the express power that they do have to do things completely on their own, almost always not used by the president.
Right.
Almost always. And when they are, yeah, I mean, if you really
You know
dig
what's
into
fun
that,
though?
was that really just their own idea? Probably not.
You know what's fun though? Watching executive orders, like as people learn that that's a thing, and then you start seeing which presidents did which ones, and then they start getting more publicized, and you just
Mm-hmm.
watch the whole thing's a fucking joke, man. Executive
A lot of
order,
them
just
are.
sidestep that, sidestep that, sidestep that.
Yeah.
It's just
But
funny
we
shit,
can't
man.
do anything
Politics.
about this thing that all of you have a problem with.
Yeah,
And then they will use also cop outs like, oh, well, I can do these things, but this other thing I'm trying to do, it's getting blockaded by Congress. It's
yeah.
like, I mean, is it though? Really? Is that the way that that works? Couldn't we just give them enough money? Isn't that how lobbying works?
I guess some of the big tech
Like, you
companies that
realize that, right? Like,
yeah,
if they're getting blockaded by Congress, that simply says they're not paying enough for that vote because Congress is completely driven by lobbying,
right.
completely driven by your belief of what you try writing letters to your congressman with your opinion of what should happen. I actually probably still in storage have a letter that was received back from the office of Doc Hastings signed by him himself, where my mom had sent him a large letter outlining her problems with the way that basically he was running not the United States, Washington state, and his response to it was was literally, that's not, I don't agree with that, so no. It's like, you are a representative of the people. What you agree with means absolutely nothing.
Mm,
Nothing. You do not get paid to have an opinion. Your office is not one that has its own opinion. You are a congressional representative of the people. You don't have fucking thoughts. Your constituents have thoughts, and you are a little vessel that takes them to a meeting. What do you
yeah.
mean you don't agree with it? I don't give a fuck about that. I don't pay you. You don't get tax dollars to have thoughts.
Mm,
That's not the way that a congressional representative works. You do
yeah,
not
yeah.
get a congressional representative because they have good thoughts and good agendas for the way that they're going to take the state or the constituency. You get them because they are a good representative of the constituency, which means that they clearly communicate the thoughts, emotions, and desires of the constituency to those that are making the laws that have to do with that constituency. That is the point of a representative. You are representing something else. Only they're standing for themselves and receiving lobbying dollars that get paid to them, not to their constituents. You know,
Right.
would you have a problem with big pharma lobbying in your area in order to get something across if when they changed the law, you suddenly got a windfall of $150,000? You would be much more okay with it. The big problem is they're swindling on the back end. Some dude gets $150 million. You don't get shit. The law applies to you, and the other guy, it doesn't really have anything to do with him. He actually doesn't
Mhm.
even live in that state. you know, like most of his holdings, houses, resources, land, etc., it's all in a different state. Yeah, I don't give a fuck about how things go there. He does give a fuck about the fact that, Pfizer was willing to give him $38 million for his next election campaign, though.
Mhm.
But how come that was not disseminated through the people that he represents? He's not an entity. He's a representative entity. How is he collecting things in order to adjust decisions when he's actually just a representational figurehead for a group of people? Should those payments not be going out to the people that he represents? I believe so. If the
Mm.
lobbying's actually functioning properly. If it's not functioning like that, it sounds like you got a couple of swindlers fucking pulling shit over on people. That's what it sounds like to me. Yeah. It's bullshit. The whole thing. The entire executive system. If you think
Yeah,
that it's very real, well, we don't agree. It's very much so a bullshit system. It always has been. I
yep,
don't
a
really
little bit.
understand how anybody
Yeah.
looks at it and goes like, this is a
I
very
it
good
just
system.
it to be then that's where no, and I know, and that's where everybody's, like, out there. I've just seen more people in a hardline narratives in my life that I kinda didn't think I'd really see them change before they die, over the next
Mm,
10, 20, 30 years, like, just really ingrained
yeah.
worldviews, and, they're shifting, and I'm like, "Huh, that's interesting.
Ah, it's
Didn't see that
amazing what
coming."
people can do when they don't have a fucking choice, huh?
Yeah, no, I know, and I mean, the whole
Yeah.
world, however it goes, I mean, I appreciate the disrupt,
Yeah.
on, like, every level.
And
I
for
appreciate it.
anybody watching's own personal self-help, realize the universe, as we like to affectionately call it, it knows about this function. It knows that if it really wants you to change, it just simply offers you no other fucking choice. And humans do not like that about
Mm,
their life. They oftentimes, complain very hard about that
mhm,
situation. The much more effective thing to do in that situation is to accept that this is how it is. You know, it's much
mhm.
better for your life. It's much more functional as well. Because if the universe decides that this is the way that it is, I assure you, there's nothing you can do about it. It's much bigger and more powerful than you,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
Like if the universe decides, you know what, that Earth place, oxygen sucks there. We all die.
Yep.
What are you gonna fucking do about it?
This
You're gonna
dream's
bottle
over.
up all the O2 and you're gonna, live in a bubble for the rest of your life? Like, that ain't gonna last very long, dude. Like,
Yeah.
trust me, if the universe decides Earth don't get oxygen no more, humans die. Like, that's how it goes. No matter how hard they fight against it,
Mm.
that's what happens.
Yeah.
You need oxygen. That's one of your weaknesses. You know.
Yep, a little bit.
So if you had to change,
Until
would you be able to?
we can figure
Would
out our
you?
Superman genes. Then we're fueled by
Yeah.
the sun until the sun no longer gives off sunlight. Then it's
It's
fucked. But
probably the only way we would ever get over our rampant dependence on oxygen, which we don't
yeah.
like really as humans look at as a problem. But if you look at it objectively from like, how strong is this thing? The first thing that you do is you go, well, what are its weaknesses? And its weaknesses look like the things that it's dependent on. Functionally, from a military standpoint, these are its baggage chains. And
Mm.
every army has to get its resources from somewhere, and it's dependent on where it gets its resources from and how they get there. And so, if that baggage chain gets cut, well, you're in a lot of trouble. So, if you're looking at any entity and you're trying to discern their strength, one very important thing to do is look at their dependencies. And when you're
Yeah.
looking at the human, biology, it's got a lot of fucking dependencies, man. It needs all these fucking nutrients. It needs a certain amount of water. It needs fucking all this shit. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And in that, really, that we should be, I think, very grateful and thankful for the fact that our life exists, because we actually exist in a place where we have an awful lot of dependencies, which means that we live in an environment that is quite nurturing for the experience that we are having. If it wasn't quite nurturing to that, something with as many dependencies as we have would have a really hard time living here. Because we have so many dependencies and we're so nurtured in that space that we actually add dependencies for fun and then pretend that we have a problem with them by calling them addictions that we can't stop. Like,
Yeah.
I'm addicted to cigarettes. Trust me, you don't need cigarettes. Okay?
Yeah.
Many, many humans have gone through their life never having a cigarette, and it was just fine. And then there's
Yeah.
other people who started smoking cigarettes, and now they tell you that they need a cigarette, and we need to adjust everything that we're doing and how we're doing it so that they can have a cigarette. And before, if anybody thinks that
Yeah. No
I'm
doubt.
hating on something, this is a pot calling a kettle black. I smoked cigarettes, have
Yeah.
smoked cigarettes for an extremely long time, and I realize it's one of my fucking weaknesses. And I've worked with it an awful lot because of that, to ensure that if I am going to be engaging with tobacco, I don't want it to be a dependency that renders me weak, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I've definitely made strides with that. But to say that I was free from the dependency being anything that is functional weakness would be untrue. You know,
Mhm.
like I do try to make sure that I have some cigarettes available. You know what I mean? And that's something
Yeah,
that I got to put resources and time and shit to.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, Anything that you got to do that with, I mean, fuck. You probably hope that thing doesn't suddenly get cut off. Yeah.
Right, yeah, no
It's
doubt.
one of your arms, basically. Like, do
Yeah,
you use your hand? Well, you probably don't want your arm cut off, huh?
yeah,
Yeah. You got to watch
I'm
out
with
for
you.
that, man. Having those hands is a fucking. If you got a thing that's coming around and cutting stuff off, well, having extremities is a little bit dangerous. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, no doubt, man.
if you didn't have anything hanging off, they ain't got nothing to cut off. You know what I mean? But you got all these extremities and shit, and now people coming around cutting off hands, and you got a problem with that because you're trying to use those things.
Yeah, no
You know what
doubt.
I mean? It wouldn't be a problem if you didn't have the hands or the anything for them to lop off. It would just be some random thing that cruised past and had absolutely no effect, you know?
Yeah.
And but yeah, we got a lot of dependencies. I don't really think we should be adding any more, but I do understand the fun in it.
Yeah, right.
You know, I've had all kinds of fucking dependencies
Just gotta
in my
find our
life.
own
All
Rat
of them
Park
were
City.
enjoyable.
Gotta find
Yeah,
a Rat Park City, man. That's what they
yeah,
need.
this is why at the end of the day, like, do what you want to do, like,
Yeah.
have a good time. And if you're having a good time, I support you. I don't know whether it leads to the world becoming a better place or it's the perfect play for your life and it leads you to the utopia you've always imagined. I don't know, and I don't care. If you're enjoying it right now, it's fucking good enough for me. Is it good enough for you? You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, we make a fucking big ass deal out of this. Like, I
Yeah.
want to have a happy life, but it needs to look exactly like this. What if something that looks exactly like that ain't that fucking happy?
Right.
Well, you're in a little bit of a catch
Mal
22 there, aren't you?
malleability, bro. Gotta
Yeah.
be able to change
If you
new
want to be
information.
happy and you want to
That's
reach
right.
that as quickly as possible, you should probably diminish the amount of dependencies that you attach your happiness to.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
You know,
100%.
I'm personally happy because 37 years ago I fell out of my mother's vagina. Very happy about that.
Oh, my collarbone was busted on purpose, and I was pulled out with forceps,
But you got here, and do you
but I
like your
got
life?
here. I was
You're
pulled
pretty
out,
happy
so no
about it
problem.
then on a certain
Yeah,
level,
no,
right?
it's
If you
cool. Yep.
choose to
Sorry,
be.
good enough. Yeah.
Or you could
Fair
be all
enough.
pissed
Could be
off about
worse.
the way that
Yeah,
it
no
went.
doubt.
I was supposed to be born naturally, and they fucking
Hey,
C-sectioned me,
plus
these assholes, or something like that,
plus
right?
craniosacral therapy and shit has been massively healing in those regards. So there have been avenues for fix that. But yeah, it's a gratitude regardless. Either way, I didn't even know about that,
And
and that
even
was
if you
very
couldn't
cool.
fix
So
it, you
yeah,
know,
right, right. Just
like
it's a
if you wanted
bonus,
to have human life and that's what it took to get it,
no doubt.
you
Yeah,
could be
yeah,
happy with that setup if you were so
100%,
inclined. You just may not be inclined to do that.
100%.
That's fine too. But why are you inclining yourself into places that you don't like? I don't really understand why people are. In many ways, they seem to be very well inclined. They're
Mhm.
very dead set on doing that. Actually, like they search for places that they can lean themselves into that they don't feel good about, and then they have a bad time and they act like they do not know why they're having a bad time. It's like, well, you engage in a lot of arguments and you're constantly seeking out contraries so that you can basically disrupt them. What do you mean you're surprised that you don't have a good time? Like, that's fucking stressful all the time.
Yeah,
You know
no
that,
doubt.
right?
Yeah,
Like, that's what that thing is. That thing you're trying to do, that's like, most people would just literally, that's like the picture of fucking next to stress in the
yeah,
dictionary
yeah,
is exactly what you're trying to do. That's probably why it's not a very good time to my perspective. And they're like, but I love
yeah.
that shit. It's like, do you really though? You know, like if you're doing it all the time and you're having a bad time and you're telling yourself that you like it, do you really actually like it? Or are you like masochistically manipulating yourself?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not sure. It could be
yeah.
either one, but you should probably question that.
And I think with the 9/11 stuff too, 9/11 truther stuff, and like the I think the thing I've thought about a lot since then that's been the most helpful for me in that other subjects of research or interest or unfolding or unveiling things in different layers I didn't know before and all this other stuff is to not get caught up in the eddy pools, like on the river of life and learning things. You can get an eddy pool of 9/11 truth or whatever, and that's fine. Glean the information while you're in there and then dip out, man. Get back on with your life and it'll overconnect to other places. I think people get caught up in a message or trumping something or save the children even. I'm not saying
Sure.
good, bad, right, or wrong, just being aware of self and what's going on and what waves are being caught and what you're moving on. Just I don't know, just be aware, not get caught in eddies. It's nice when
Yeah.
you find out you were in one. It's nice to bump on out and dive back in the river. Just keep on rolling.
Yeah, there's an enormous amount of potential distractions out there, and arguably everything out there is potentially a distraction. You know,
Yeah,
it
no
all
doubt.
depends on where your focus is trying to stay and whether or not that's part of what would be in front of that focus. So everything really has like the possibility to be a distraction. Most things aren't like worthwhile to dive into forever. For instance, like the 9/11 truther thing, the real worthwhile synthesis out of that entire whole information for me is like it's possible that your government is not doing things in your best interest. And if you've gathered that from looking at that information, you're probably in a good spot because that is a
Yeah, good way to
possibility.
simplify it. Yeah,
That's a very real possibility. And things like that point to the fact that it might actually be the reality. But,
yeah.
you know, it's at least a strong
And it
possibility.
changes in your awareness to those things, pulling that away as a simplified, distilled thing. It then affects and it adds layer to foundational filters, the way you look at other things, which helps you to interconnect other things more quickly and more accurately because you can triangulate them in other spheres of understanding. So yeah, just like take it and get in the river, man. Just keep
Yeah.
going, keep
I think
learning,
it was
keep
a really
growing.
important thing to happen for consciousness because I think that consciousness as it currently stands is afflicted with the savior complex and it needs to
Yeah.
it will benefit from realizing that that is a farce and
Hmm.
it will only come to save itself to realizing that no one's coming to save it. That's how it will take responsibility. And most of the people who are heavily affected by information like the 9/11 truther information are people who were staunchly bought into the idea that the government was looking out for them and keeping them all safe and everything.
Yeah.
And if they stand staunchly in that position, you tell them like, "Oh, have you
Well,
heard
it's
about
funny
this
is
stuff?"
like that's like kind of being, I guess, similar to being born in the church, right? And then you just learn stuff, and then you know grow out of it, and for whatever ways people do that, and I have my own nuanced ways. But like I just grew up in a country and a family that was semi patriotic, but not like
Hmm.
extremely. It was just kind of the culture, you know. I pledge allegiance to the flag, all the stuff we do, and like just kind of general patriotism coming out of the '60s, '70s, '80s in general, and
Which
like
it should be noted that the Pledge of Allegiance is not a patriotic activity
right. No, I
because a
totally
patriot supports
agree.
the Constitution, not the flag.
Yeah,
The
totally
flag
agree.
does not stand for the Constitution in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
What is on the flag that denotes the United States Constitution? Nothing at all. So pledging allegiance to the flag is kind of nonsensical. Why would
Yeah.
you pledge your allegiance to something? You do realize that the more powerful position is being a naturalized free human being, right?
Mm.
That's significantly more powerful than having allegiance to some group. And that's supposed to be what the Constitution is guaranteeing in your life is you to be a sovereign, natural, free human being.
Mm.
So, are you sure you want to stand up in the morning, place your hand over arguably the most important spot on your body, and make an agreement to a symbolic representation that quite honestly has witchcraft all over it? That you are going to give your allegiance to that thing. Do you know what you're aligning with? Do you know what you're coming into allegiance with? Do you really understand what that flag means? Do you understand that symbol and what stands behind it? The answer for every school kid is no, you don't. You're in like elementary school and you don't know shit about flags. That's actually the reality of most people who are standing there doing the Pledge of Allegiance. They don't actually know anything about that symbolism or even what they're
Mm.
saying. They're just reciting the words that were given to them because that's what they were told to do. That is a very dangerous activity,
Mhm.
doing what you're told to do just because you were told to do it without any skepticism whatsoever. That can lead you all kinds of dangerous places.
Mhm.
If you don't think that it can, well, I have some candy, just hop in my van.
Yeah.
Don't be skeptical of what kind of candy I have, whether I really actually have it or what I'm going to do to you in the van. Just, I have candy. Hop in the van with me. You know what I mean? We all know this is in jest, like that's what, speaking in jest, the pedophilic rapist says to lure the child into the van, right? This does
Mhm.
not work on anybody with any level of skepticism. But on a child with no level of skepticism, maybe it would or something. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But the point is with this, engaging with things without a certain level of skepticism is oftentimes a dangerous activity. And,
Yeah.
anything could be that.
Well, and so, like, growing up in that dynamic, I didn't realize I was patriotic or not. I guess I was. I just didn't realize how it contrast. And then you see the differentiation in the movie. You learn some of the stuff that just all the facts. You follow the money. You follow like your own nuances through the 9/11 stuff, through other things, and you just that all crumbles. And so there's
Sure.
like an internal, I guess that I mean, just part of growing was also out of that. So the thing, I'm a human. That's what matters, and it's not a.
Mm-hmm.
Not I live in this country. I appreciate and abide by its laws for the most part in the way I live my life, and that's fine. Like there's equal give and take for the time being, and this dynamic, whatever. But that's different than um, giving and pledging allegiance. Fuck you. I pledge allegiance to myself, taking care of me and my own and my family and people around me.
That's a
Sure,
big thing
whatever.
to do, isn't it?
Yeah, no doubt. No way,
You know, I
man.
mean, like,
No country.
that's a
No, thank
fucking
you.
huge thing to do, to pledge allegiance to someone. Wow. And we're just
Yikes,
like,
man.
we're just going to do it in the morning. I mean, I'm not even completely awake yet. I just
With
barely
our
got here. Don't
children,
really want to be
repeatedly,
here, but
repeatedly.
whatever. Fuck it. I pledge allegiance. Oh, shit, wrong hand. I pledge allegiance to the flag.
Yep,
You need to use a specific hand and stand in a specific way and face the symbolic representation that is always posted above you if done properly. So you have
yep,
to look up to it, thereby placing it on a pedestal and literally positioning it in a hierarchy above you. And then you are going to willingly utilize your words to state that you are subservient and allegiant to its guidance. You don't even know what is guiding you to, especially when you're 7 years old and you're in second grade or whatever. You have
mhm,
no idea.
yeah.
Like, this is crazy. Why would you do that at
That's
that
why, like,
point in
I've
time?
gone in through, contract revocations or meditations or things, going back and, like, canceling out those words or breaking those contracts or those agreements and
Sure.
returning that energy back to myself. It's like, that's bringing awareness when those things happen. That's like, "Oh, shit," because we really can't change our memories or change the past or our energetic engagements, if you will, with those things. But, yeah, there's some
Yeah.
shit, man. If you're not aware, you're not aware, and now some of you are aware, so do with that what you will, motherfucker.
Yeah. I used to do it because, like, well, I was a fucking troll. I still am. You know,
Mhm,
when I used to have, like, we had to say the Pledge of Allegiance and you would get a referral in school if you didn't stand up and do it. But
mhm.
I had a whole way of going down it that was actually honoring homosexuals, even though I wasn't homosexual. I just thought it was funny because I
Uh-huh.
pledge allegiance to the fags of the United States of America.
Well
I
done,
used to
sir.
do that every morning, and I had like the whole rest of the dialogue was all this stuff that was basically like rhyming or following the same cadence. It was, stuff that
Yeah.
homosexual males do.
Yeah,
Just because
yeah.
like I thought it was funny that it's like I'm just pledging allegiance to some random shit
Yeah.
anyways. Like I might as well have a good time with this, you know. I don't actually pledge allegiance to really anything because
Yeah, no.
I'm not even allegiant to myself. If I come to realize that I was operating like a dumbass, I'm going to revolt against myself. You can bet your
Mm.
ass on that.
Yeah.
There, I don't even have allegiance to myself. I have sovereignty in myself, which means I don't have to be allegiant to shit.
Mm. Yeah, yeah, fair enough.
I don't have any allegiance. I'm sovereign. Sovereigns don't have allegiance to something. Things have
Mm.
allegiance to sovereignty. That's the way that those words work. I
Mm.
don't pledge allegiance to anything. Why? Why would I do that? I'm a sovereign position.
Mm.
I don't need allegiance. I'm secure by myself. What do I need allegiance for? You
Yeah.
need to align with me so that you can have some of the security that I have, not the other way around. You know what I mean? My country's
Yeah.
fucking fine. You
Yeah.
know, my little world right here, Zactopia, it's great. It's doing perfectly. The economy is always doing well. And if it's not, we know exactly who to blame.
Yeah,
uh,
no doubt.
the resources always get expended the way that the people want because the population is literally one and I determine how all the money gets spent. It works
Yeah.
out very good. It's very easy to balance the economy. I buy whatever the fuck I want, and that's exactly what the people wanted. You know what I mean?
Perfect. Yeah.
Super easy. Sovereign states are super easy to run. The problem with
Mm.
them is that they have to be run by their sovereign. So if you aren't willing to take the responsibility to run your sovereign state, you don't get to fucking have one.
Mm.
And so you got to live in someone else's allegiant state, or maybe their allegiant country, or maybe their
Mm.
allegiant ideology or dogma or religion or whatever the fuck it is. You can pledge allegiance to all kinds of things. It really doesn't matter. You can pledge allegiance to the New York Jets if you want. They're just a football team, but you can pledge allegiance to them if you'd like. Simply buy a shirt
Yeah.
and say you support them in a certain way,
Mhm.
like you're allegiant to them now, right? Like
Yeah, to a
start going to
degree,
their
yeah.
games, follow them around.
Yeah.
You're exercising allegiance through any type of fanaticism, which being a fan of a team is agreeing that you are fanatic about something, which white people are eager to make this agreement about themselves is kind of interesting, right? Like, oh no, I'm not crazy about this. I'm just a fan of the Chicago Bulls. It's like, actually the word fan insinuates you're all crazy about this. It's
Yeah,
like, you know,
it's
that
true. Another
it
thing to be
literally
proud of it.
means fanatic.
Yeah,
So like, a lot of crossover there actually. I'm pretty sure you're crazy about the Bulls, you know?
yeah.
No, I'm just a fan, man. Last I checked, that's the same thing.
Right.
So, at any rate, you know, be sovereign to yourself or don't. It really doesn't matter. Us other sovereign states out here don't care what you do. We really don't. Because it's got absolutely nothing to do with our sovereign state. You do whatever you want with the world, and we'll continue to live in ours, and everybody can be happy with that, unless, of course,
Everybody
you aren't
wins, man.
happy with your world, in which case you should probably do something to change it. That's what we do over here in the sovereign states, and we have everything works out fine for us. We don't have a lot of the same problems that the non-sovereign states have. So if you live in an allegiance state and you're having these problems, that might be why. You know, I don't have anything against you for that. It's just not the way that I operate, you know.
Yeah,
Maybe do it a different way. There's all kinds of things that I don't get that are benefits of allegiance. I just don't think they're good enough to give away my sovereignty.
yeah, yeah.
So, not interested. You know,
Awesome.
allegiance states have all kinds of other people that you can leverage their time in order to accomplish your goals, and it's way better for corporate deployments. Way, way better. Yeah. So,
Yep. And also on this 9/11 day, 19 years later, remember to never pledge allegiance to anyone. It's probably not a good idea. You can do what you want to do, but it's probably not a good idea. At least thinking about what you're doing, and also learning, if you haven't learned now, that you can't really trust your government, and it's not a bad thing. So just take that in stride, keep that in mind, put that in your filters in life, because that will benefit you greatly as you analyze everything.
yeah.
So with that,
Hope for the best, prepare for the worst, right?
yep,
It's
trust but
altogether
verify.
possible that the government would help us out dramatically, but it doesn't look
But
like that's really been their jam. So it's possible that they won't also.
yeah,
So, you know, take that into account and maybe make sure that you can take care of you and the people that you care about. And you're not waiting on some savior to come do that for you, because the superhero complex runs deep, but at the end of the day, it is fictional. There's not superheroes. There's the people who stand up to the task that's in front of them and do what it takes in order to have the success that they would like to see in their life. Those responsible individuals accomplish the things that they want. And I appreciate you for using that response that you have inside of yourself to come and watch this stream if you heard this
Mhm.
shit. Thanks for being here. We'll see you another time. Like, subscribe, bell notifications, social media channels in the description below, or don't. Doesn't matter, you know. But at the end of the day, maybe it would benefit you. I don't know. Have a good night,
Yeah,
everybody. Aaron, I love you. I
love it too,
love
man.
all of the people that are here. Please don't be fans, though. Be level headed individuals who watch our podcast. Thank you.
Be fam. Fam fan.